Welcome to the 175th installment of Ear to the Ground, the Land Stewardship Project's podcast on family farming, sustainable agriculture, local food systems, and local democracy. I'm Brian DeVore, editor of the Land Stewardship Letter. In Ear to the Ground 173 and 174, we discussed Indiana's Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative, an integrated team approach that has brought together farmers, conservation agency experts, scientists, and agribusiness firms. Their common goal is to improve soil health in the Hoosier State by establishing, among other things, more cover crops in corn and soybean fields that are normally bare from late fall into early spring. The Conservation Cropping System Initiative's approach has turned out to be quite successful, with approximately 1 million acres of Indiana cropland now protected with cover crops. This success has come at a time when many other Corn Belt states are struggling to increase cover crop acres significantly, and Indiana has become a national model for promoting and supporting soil-friendly farming practices. It's hoped that the success with cover cropping will prompt Indiana farmers to go beyond this one practice and establish integrated, holistic production systems that can build soil health in the long term. I recently attended a series of Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative field days in Indiana. While there, I talked to several farmers who are at various stages of adopting and utilizing soil-friendly practices such as cover cropping. One of those farmers was Gordon Smiley, who, along with his brother Jeff, farms 1,200 acres of row crops in southern Indiana. They have a farrow-to-finish hog operation, and the cover crops offer a way to soak up excess nutrients and reduce runoff while increasing their soil's tilth. Gordon talked to me about his experience with cover cropping and the key role the Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative has played in helping him make soil health improvement a central part of the Smiley Farms operation.
We tried cover crops in 2010 with some radish that, after reading some things, thought it would be great. Planted it with the planter, did an absolutely perfect job. It didn't rain, had an absolutely zero crop with it, but we weren't deferred. It's just the fact it didn't rain. And so since 2011, we've been able to plant all 1,200 acres of crops and cover crops one way or another. Some of them's been successful, some of them's been not. It's a learning experience. And I think the thing that got us going with it was that since we have the livestock manure in the past and we apply a lot of manure in the fall, we were trying to make sure we were utilizing every bit of it. Didn't want to lose anything. We wanted to fully utilize it. So when we applied cover crops in the fall of 2011, and then we knifed in manure about 3 weeks after the cover crop had been planted, it went dark green, and that was our aha moment that just really set us up and kind of excited us. And then we saw what it was starting to do really 2 years after we'd been doing it to the soil tilth. And so from that point forward, we've gotten rid of the tanker and went to a dragline system because the other component of the livestock and the manure was the compaction. And so our whole idea was to get rid of compaction. We have owned track tractors for 10 years, and the whole idea in the past has been to always continually think about that compaction so those roots will grow down. And so a combination with the cover crops being able to grow deep, we've been lucky to have the NRCS locally to also come out in the spring and do some soil probes for us. So we've been up to find what these cover crops are doing. So between turning green and seeing how deep the roots are going, this is kind of our aha moments.
Why did you feel like you had to it's a little bit of an extra hassle to do the cover crop? Was there some economic and maybe even environmental reasons why you thought maybe you needed to take on the extra hassle?
Well, in our case, with the livestock, we were already having to do a nutrient management plan. So we knew what we were doing there. We're taking soil samples every 3 years and knowing our levels and these things like this. But we were trying to make sure we weren't losing any of that nitrogen that we were fall applying because of our time frame. We needed to apply it in the fall, but we didn't want to lose it. And I guess when we talk about the economics of it, we had seen and read a lot of articles about people that were no-tilling with it. At that point in time, we had only no-tilled soybeans into corn stubble. We had not no-tilled corn onto beans or corn onto corn. And so with that, we thought, well, if we can do the cover crops, we will get rid of the fall tillage and possibly the spring tillage, and so we could go to a straight no-till. So it was an economic move, and we actually sold the chisel plow about in 2013, and so we made the commitment. We couldn't go to the shed and get it out.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's sometimes people drag them out of the weeds once they've something goes wrong.
That's exactly right. I mean, we cut ties and we said this is what we're going to do, and we can make it work. We had a really good agronomist that we felt like like that we could lean onto with lots of questions. But we attended no-till meetings, and we also attended soil health meetings and learned from a lot of other people. It was we really went to other people who had a lot of experience, and so we didn't do their same mistakes.
I think that's a good point, and one of the things that struck me just here in the past few days is the kind of team effort almost, that there's different agencies and private businesses involved and farmers willing to share information. I mean, how important is that to kind of have that, I guess, network available for when you're doing a transition like this?
Oh, it's absolutely huge. I mean, we all got to make our own mistakes. It's just like putting an airplane up in the air and saying, oh, it's going to work. You know, it worked for us perfect for a year or two if it rains all the time. But if you put an airplane up in the air and it doesn't rain, it doesn't work either. And so we all learn, but that team effort is totally huge. And we all have to accept, you know, how good we want to be. Do we want to be 10 out of 10, or do we want to be, I'll take a 7 out of 10, and just so I don't risk it all, because if we go for 10 out of 10, sometimes we end up with 2 out of 10, and it's not quite as good.
Can you think of some examples where maybe you ran into a little bit of a roadblock and you were able to maybe get some information or get some support that way to get over that a little bit?
Young man, our neighbor of ours, Roger Winning, has absolutely been into this no-till for 20 years, and Roger's been a great source of information. Terry Taylor in Southern Illinois has taken us under his wing, and we can call Terry up at any time. And so I think that whether it in-state or out-of-state, we've found really good people who have been doing particularly the no-till for a long time, but they made the comment to us, he said, no-till's great, but when you add no-till and cover crops together, it's not 2 plus 2 now. It's 2 plus 2 is equal to 6.
You know, one of the things you had mentioned before was it's one of your goals, it sounds like your farm's goals, is to kind of leave the land better than you found it. And you had kind of maybe come to the conclusion a few years ago that wasn't the case, that you weren't seeing that. It sounds like maybe now integrating the no-till and the cover cropping has helped you kind of honestly say to yourself, well, maybe we are headed in that direction of leaving it better than we found it.
Well, we would hope so. In other words, even though we're on relatively low slopes, as far as 2 to 5% at the most, we don't have huge erosion, but you can have a pretty big erosion in a 3-inch rain, you know, when it's April 15th and you got the ground worked. And so you still got that to us as a point that we really don't want to have those events happening to us. And so from that standpoint of view, with some kind of cover crop out there, we're not gutsy enough just yet to go plant green. That's probably one of our things down the road we're going to try. We're still killing it when it gets 15 to 20 inches tall is our goal right now, but we take small steps and we'll try these other steps. But we also have to remember the carbon-nitrogen ratio and some of these things of what we tie up. But I think with the livestock thing, we learned probably really quick of how well that those cover crops are taking up those nutrients, so we aren't worrying about them going down the streams. Can
you give me what an average year looks like as far as when you're planting the cover crops, how you're planting them in, and what kind of mixes you're using?
Well, average this year, when we've changed, and this year we think that we finally just settled on that we are going to do seed-to-soil contact is very, very important for us. So we went out and found a used 45-foot drill, and we're going to put it right behind the combine, whether it be beans or corn. Probably behind beans, we're going to run cereal rye, 20 pounds, barley at 15, oats at 10, probably a pound of rape, and maybe a pound of outside clover. And it's going to be about 43-pound mix. And then we will take the rape will be in after corn, I guess, and then we'll put earlier on we'll use the radish in behind the soybeans. And so we want 4 out of 5 that'll survive all winter.
So when you're able to get that in, when you're taking corn off, I don't know, when is that working?
Well, we tried something a little different this year, too. We planted some 2.8 to 3.1 beans, and so we hope by the 10th of September we'll be pulling some soybeans off, and we should be pulling corn off by September 20th. And so we've actually moved our maturity up just a little bit on our crops, thinking down the road this is likely we're doing. But with cereal rye and barley both being able to germinate at 40 degrees, we planted stuff as late as November the 15th and still get them to grow here in southern Indiana. So we're not discouraged. We just know that the quicker growth, the better off.
What are you looking down the road here now that you said you kind of 2011 was your first successful year, so we're 4 years down the road. What are you seeing? Is it too early to see some of the results, some positive results, or are you starting to see some impacts both in the soil and maybe even, I don't know, economically, if you've been able to pencil that out yet?
I don't know that we've been able to pencil it out for sure just yet, but Jeff and I both carry a spade around with us in the trucks, and we're always sticking the spade in the ground looking. And the other encouraging thing is that If you wanted to go fishing with me April 15th, I could go out to the bean field and dig enough earthworms up to do that. I don't have to go to a special spot, and we've never been able to find that many earthworms of that size at that time of the year. And so the earthworm population is just telling us that is our deep tillage tool. We find holes down 2 feet deep, and so we know that we can't put a piece of steel that deep, and we're excited about what we're seeing with those. I think it was early April. We had like a 3-inch rain one night, and we got a creek or an open ditch that mostly all the water through that open ditch comes off the property that we control, and all of it's cover cropped. And then we have a creek it's probably 400 yards down the road from there that basically drains a bunch of property off the neighbors. And I just simply took a picture coming out of that open ditch where the cover crops were, and it was basically clean. I won't say perfectly clean, but very clean after a 3-inch rain. And I drove right down the road and took another picture, and you could see the brown silt in it, and it was just the coloration difference. And so we felt good that what we were doing is in the right direction.
One of the things I talked to Barry Fisher and Dr. Ray Weil about was this, and this has been brought up repeatedly this week, is this whole idea of there's been, frankly, agriculture's gotten a bit of a black eye in recent years with the Chesapeake Bay example was the one Ray Weil talked about, and then we've got the Lake Erie situation, and then the lawsuit that the Des Moines Water Works is involved with. One of the things I think that's positive about what's happening here in Indiana is you guys seem to be taking a proactive approach, and that whole idea of if we don't figure out a way to do this in a proactive way, maybe it's going to be forced down our throats and we're not going to like how it's done. How important is that to you? I mean, you guys are, one of the reasons I'm here is I've seen the statistics. You're a leader in the number of cover crop acres you got established here. And there seems to be this real integrated approach and proactive approach at taking the bull by the horns on this situation before maybe it's not a voluntary situation.
Well, I think it's, from the livestock with the nutrient management plan we've had to do, I think that's one thing from our side. But I guess we're all curious, and farmers always like to do a better job. And I would encourage anybody to take 20 acres and just, try the cover crop. And it's one of those things that we say, I can't do that. Well, that's not necessarily the case until we try it and see what really happens. We don't want to admit failure before we even try something. I mean, something that's really wild that we tried this year, we double crop beans behind our barley. Well, it was so wet that we couldn't get the double crop beans. I mean, we got them in, but we couldn't get the manure on like we normally put on even though it was going on bean ground. Well, we put dragline manure on double crop beans 5 weeks after they were planted, and they were 10, 12 inches tall, maybe killed 10 to 15% of them, and it looks like we're going to have a great crop. And so what we've learned about the manure with the dragline is that we get that cover crop established. That's a priority. Then whenever you can get the manure to it, it'll be fine, and it's you don't turn them around. You get that green crop going, so you get those roots started. And so just try a little bit, and even if it's working with the neighbor because he's got the right equipment, we'll bring him in and let him do a little bit. It's it's not 20 acres we can all risk. It's not the whole farm. It's
another way of farmers showing that they're being innovative and maybe looking at there were some issues with. I know one of the messages that came out this week was there's a lot of economic benefits, agronomic benefits that can come from cover cropping, and it can be a win-win because it can help produce cleaner water.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we have done, we talked about where do we learn from. I mean, I am, and a lot of us, the young people use YouTube and podcast or whatever else. If you get on YouTube and do a search for soil health or things like that, there's lots of people that's put out great things that you can listen to, you can watch, and so that's how we learn from others. And so it's a team effort, and they're not necessarily your neighbor right next door, but it's a team from Nebraska, Minnesota, wherever. Somebody's already tried it. So, and then if you need to, after it's over, pick up the phone and call them.
As you're looking to the future and trying to integrate this more into your system, what's kind of a barrier or, a frustration that you're trying to deal with? I mean, you're obviously coming to these field days to learn something, but what's something that you like, if we could get that figured out, that would really help us get over the hump a little bit?
Well, I think our next thing is looking at these specific cocktail mixes. We're not going to find the silver. You're not going to find a silver bullet. But they're saying, if you mix 4, 5, 6 together, we just don't understand how they all work together. But it's really, really positive. And maybe we're looking for that 1 or 2 things that somebody's put in their mix that's really good. I think next year we're going to try the fact that we may plant a 10-way mix right after our wheat or whatever and let it go. And they talk about being able to raise soil organic maybe 0.5 to 0.75% in 1 year. Well, that would be huge because now we're talking about water holding capacity and all kinds of things. So maybe this would be a good plan that we could mix it all together.
You can read more about the Conservation Cropping Systems Initiative in the article King of the Cover Crops, which appears in the number 4, 2015 edition of the Land Stewardship Letter. It's available at www.landstewardshipproject.org. If you have comments or suggestions about this podcast, contact Brian DeVore at bdevore@landstewardshipproject.org, or you can call 612-722-6377. Thanks to Laura Borgendale, Western Minnesota musician, for Ear to the Ground's theme music. And a special thank you to all of Land Stewardship Project's members who make initiatives such as this podcast possible. If you're not a member, visit landstewardshipproject.org to learn how you can support LSP. Thanks for listening.